Well, with some injuries to some key players exposing the lack of organizational depth at premium positions, the St. Louis Blues find themselves at the start of an important month of hockey here in November. We've got a special guest on today, Mike Meyer, to talk about which young Blues players and prospects he has his eye on. So we're going to discuss which of them we're counting on to step up, whether any prospects could see some NHL playing time this season, and which prospects like Jimmy Snuggerud, Dalibor Dvorsky, and Adam Jiricek could be a big part of the Blues' future. All that and more on this episode of Note News. Welcome back into another special episode of Note News. We've got a lot of cool prospects talk to get into, talk about some young guys. So we'll go ahead and dive right into that. But before we do, if you're new to Note News, we would appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We have more plugs to give because we've got a special guest on, as I mentioned. Mike, how you doing today? Would you want to tell some of our listeners, our viewers, a little bit about yourself and maybe where they can find some of your stuff?
Appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate it. So biggest and most active spot you guys can be able to find me here is Twitter. Here again at M_Meyer3. And then I did just start a Substack account. I was covering the prospects here in the Blues here formerly with the Hockey Writers and a brief stint here with the Hockey News. Decided to venture out here on my own and then covering mostly just the Blues prospects, soon to be draft coverage here and whatnot here coming up. I'm getting more active here on it, so just bear with me here as I get my bearing straight here on Substack, kind of figure out what all that's here about. But you can be able to find that here at Blue Notes Rising. Here is the name here of the Substack.
Yeah, awesome. We looked through some of the stuff that you've written already. It's great stuff. Like you said, it's pretty new, so there's not a lot there quantity wise, but the quality sure is there. So a great read there, and we'll add links to that all that stuff in the show notes as well. So
Awesome.
Be sure to check out some of that stuff. Well, I figured we'd jump right into it. Starting with Mike, would you want to tell some of our listeners and viewers about some under the radar prospects? We'll talk about the big guys here in a second, but what are some sort of dark horses, maybe some sleeper prospects that you've got your eye on in particular this season so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I got three guys here who kind of come to mind. One guy, Yori Pakari. He's a Slovakian drafted in the third round here, 2023. Very, very impressive offensive hockey IQ. He's very slick, passing ability, angle through the offensive zone. If you can go to catch some highlight reels of him online, highly recommend it. He played in only 43 USHL games here last season due to a bit of an injury. 9 goals, but 49 points are in there. Big playmaker. He was playing with the Dubuque Fighting Saints here in Iowa. Then he followed it up here with another 3 goals, 10 points in 11 postseason games. Very impressive. And then now he's worked his way up to Canada. He's playing in the QMJHL here this year. He's already at a point per game pace with 3 goals, 15 points in 15 games. So definitely a guy to really keep your eye here on. I look at him as a good contributing middle six type of a guy. Working our way still in Canada, the WHL though, Thomas Mercer. Really like this game. He is a 2024 draft pick. He's a wicked shot. Solid skating, speed, willingness to be able to hit. Everything Blues fans are going to be able to absolutely just love. He's still got to round out his game, a couple of like the finer points, get better like on his defensive side here of the game. But I really like this kid. He's continuing to again work and be able to play here in the WHL this season after being traded by the Medicine Hat Tigers back in August to the Prince Albert Raiders. And I think it was actually a really good trade here for him. He's got 2 goals, 6 points in his last 5 games. And while point projections here right now, it's still really skewed, like what you can be able to say of what he's going to be forecasted to be able to get. He's projected for 41 goals here in 87 points. So, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. And this is something Bill just said because the highest point total actually came last season when he scored 23 goals and 62 points in 63 games. So this kid's a monster. And this one, it's kind of a more, I guess, like under the radar, and I guess just not really kind of like the forgotten guy here for Blues fans. But Otto Stenberg, I don't understand why Blues
Yeah.
don't keep him like at the top of their minds. So again, it's crazy to call him a sleeper pick, but in St. Louis, he definitely is. So he was within that trio of first round draft picks here in 2023 with Dvorsky here and Theo Lindell. He's gotten a little bit of everything, and honestly, he reminds me of Alexander Steen. And it's not just the Swedish connection right there. I know it's an easy connection, but it's not. He made the move from Frölunda in the SHL last season, playing in the top league here in Sweden with the Malmo Redhawks here now, and he's already matched his point production of 6 points in 31 games last year. And while most fans are going to look at that like, cool, he hit 6 points, guys. Like, what's to be hyped about? You have to remember, like, the SHL is the top league in Sweden. And he was not getting a lot of time here over there. So while he was producing getting a lot of playing time in a lot of games here at the highest level, they're now giving him consistent third line. He's worked his way up a little bit to the second and first every now and then, but he's getting good deployment. So again, 6 points here already in 16 games here this season. Huge standout. If you ever watch the World Juniors, massive standout last year at the World Juniors, scoring 5 goals, 9 points in 7 games. I still think he's got solid top six point production written all over him.
Yeah. Sure. I kind of want to bounce off of that on Stenberg. Is something interesting to me has been monitoring how the Blues draft specifically, I think within the first round. Obviously we had that year with all the 3 first round picks, but it feels like they've been taking a lot of swings to me, really trying to shoot for upside. So how would you describe the Blues first round draft strategy, or even just high in the draft strategy in the past couple of years? And how do you think that's going to set them up into the future?
I think it's definitely changed a lot. I mean, you start seeing a little bit more of a willingness to go for those swings, especially now that they're getting a little bit higher in the draft. Beforehand, they had to play very conservative. These were guys who were getting like in the bottom third here of the draft, and now they're getting a little bit higher. And so these are guys who that they are willing to say, you know what, I like his upside. I think with some good development, some good training and direction that we can be able to really round this guy out here really, really well. But you're also getting a lot of good supports here from their scouting staff here now. I think they're investing a lot more into their scouting staff, and I think that they're really, really taking that to heart here as they do have some higher draft pick pedigree here about them. So I like what they're doing. I like the swings. Worst case scenario here is, you've got a guy who in the first round, I don't think you can be able to say, hey, you were conservative with this. You shoulda, coulda, woulda had that. No, they're going for it. So I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were fortunate enough to have started this podcast before this year's draft, so we were able to cover that. So that was a whole lot of fun. Yeah, like the names you mentioned, like Pakari, we saw him have a pretty, I guess, significant for him preseason, didn't we? With the Blues, am I right about that? Do I have the right name there?
Yeah. I don't have point totals here for him as far as like the preseason here end up going. It's always tough to try and find those stats here consistently. Yeah. So he was all over the ice. I mean, again, I think he was true to his pedigree, where he's great in the offensive zone, but he's still pretty reliable here in his own zone here at that point. But I think he's going to be a guy to definitely keep an eye here on.
For sure. Yeah, Stenberg as well. I mean, like you mentioned, the SHL is a tough league. We saw it with Dvorsky last year, right, where he just sort of wasn't able to hang with the grown men in that league, but did a lot better in the OHL. We'll talk more about Dvorsky here in a couple of minutes, but Stenberg, I mean, he's only 19. Do I have that right? I mean, a young guy, and like you said, getting any points on the board in such a competitive league is definitely a plus. Well, sort of speaking of some of those bigger names, why don't we go ahead and shift to what I'm calling the big boys discussion, where we're going to talk about Jimmy Snuggerud, Dalibor Dvorsky, and then Adam Jiricek as well. Real quick, one last note. Mike, you wrote a really cool article a few days ago We sort of broke down, the past week of play from a number of prospects. And on the Mercic point, he had a great week, so everyone should go read that one. I want to start with Jimmy Snuggerud because you wrote the previous article that you wrote on your Blue Notes Rising Substack was about Jimmy Snuggerud. You sort of wrote how his season started slowly on the offensive side, particularly from a goal scoring standpoint, right? But maybe he's starting to turn it around. What are you seeing from Snuggerud?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I've started to really see, and I was able to confirm this here a little bit with some folks who pay a little bit closer of attention to the Gophers than what I do, because clips can be very misleading, but what I was seeing in a lot of clips here from him was like just pure frustration. He wasn't scoring despite putting up 5, 6, 7 shots on goal per game. And I get that. Like you're doing everything you possibly can to score goals, and it's just not going in. And so it seemed like at times I'm like, why does he look like he's just turning around and just shooting as hard as he can here? And it doesn't matter what he's shooting at. It just go that direction. I don't even care. So from everything here that I gathered here from them is that it seemed like that there may be a little bit of misuse and misdeployment here from him. If you looked here at it, he was being deployed here at a little bit of like near, the top, near the point here for like his just wicked bomb of a shot. And I get it, but that's not really where you want a guy like Snuggerud to be able to play. I mean, I want him close and be able to just utilize that, almost like an Alex Ovechkin type, really just fired in here as hard as he can from as close as he can, and that he's willing to be able to do so. So it does look like that they've brought him in a little bit closer on there, here on the man advantage. And so that being said, he's starting to putting up some points. And while it hasn't been on the power play, he's looking a lot better. And so he put up 2 goals here against Penn State here like this past weekend. And then unfortunately he had that game misconduct. I don't know if you guys saw the clip.
Yeah.
It looked clean to me. And the guy just did not, I could have understood the penalty. I didn't get the game misconduct. I didn't get it. So, and of course now, his stat line's looking ugly. It's like 17 penalty minutes in like 8 games or something. And you're like, what the heck? So, but what's really great is, he's going to be going into next weekend. He's got 8 points in his last 5 games and 1 period played. So, I'm really liking how he's trending at this point.
Sure. I think on that point, if you're saying that he's trending in the right direction after having such a phenomenal season last year too, what exactly are you hoping to see out of Snuggerud for this season? And sort of building off that too, do you think there's any chance that he finishes the season in St. Louis, or do you think that he's really going to stay? I know he expressed interest in staying with Minnesota. We've seen it happen before, but just what are your feelings on Snuggerud's projection for this season? Is he continuing to grow into his own here, or is this more of we still need a little bit more sample size to determine with Snug?
All great questions. So the easy one here, I think he's definitely going to finish out the season here in Minnesota. Like there's no question. He has expressed his desire to really chase here after that championship here in the NCAA. Which if you get the chance to be able to purchase some tickets, they're a little bit pricey here right now, but the NCAA Frozen Four is going to be at the Enterprise Center this year.
Yep, yeah.
So get your tickets. This is set to be a good one. So he's really desiring that. And as one of like the 19 captains that Minnesota named this year, he's a natural leader here in that locker room. And so I'm really looking for the on-ice discipline, which is where right now I'm a little bit like, okay, why are we not seeing this from one of the captains? He needs to be the one who's setting the example, and right now he's not doing that, which is where I think really having some good, strong leadership and mentorship here from, say, like at the NHL level, like with the Blues, is going to help him out a lot once he officially reaches that level. I really want to start seeing the point production coming his way. I don't personally care if it's at the goal scoring or in the assist column. I want to see the point production. I need to see that here again. It doesn't need to be at the same, over point per game pace that he was putting up here with Logan Cooley and Matthew Nyes. And I mean, like that was just a freak line, just a monster line. but I need to be able to see that, this guy is worthy here, like of his first round draft pick. So I still think that he's going to be a very valuable and a really good second line forward, could potentially work his way up to first line, but I think you could very solidly place him on that second line here in the NHL at the peak of his career, put him on that first unit power play and just let him trip. I think he's still got really good hockey IQ on all ends of the ice. I just want to be able to see that just a little bit more consistently. And we're only in November. I mean, still very, very, very early in the season. And it's tough sometimes to get into a good rhythm when, especially in college, you'll play 1, 2, maybe 3 games, and then you're off for like a week. And then you play another 1, 2. So it's kind of hard to like really start feeling like you're in a good rhythm. Something similar to like what the AHL and the NHL does.
Yeah, and Snuggerud in particular is a player that has a lot of respect from his teammates, right? Like we've seen a lot of his college teammates, or I guess like junior teammates picking him as like one of the most underrated players at their level, right? And picking him out that way. I do want to expose Alec for a second, because over the summer when we did our bold predictions episode, and there was admittedly a little bit less, I think, certainty about Snuggerud's intentions. He boldly predicted, as the name suggests, that Snuggerud would make the Blues at the NHL level, play around 40 games, and score 18 to 20 goals. Alec, what do you have to say for yourself?
Hey, I was boldly projecting the Logan Cooley path, but I'm just excited to see him when he gets here.
That's fair enough. Why don't we talk about another forward that I think a lot of people sort of lumped into this discussion as well. People like to get really excited about Jimmy Snuggerud and this next guy, Dalibor Dvorsky. We've got some looks at Dvorsky in the Blues preseason training camp, against somewhat NHL level caliber talent and competition. Mike, my question for you is, did you think he looked ready, or did you see any like glaring weaknesses in his game in any of those preseason games? Because we didn't think. I mean, it sort of just looked like he couldn't quite hang still with I guess the grown-ups.
So here's where the good argument here comes from. If the Blues were in a little bit of a lesser state, if they were rebuilding, they absolutely could have just kept him in and just kept playing. And I don't think anybody would have been shocked by that. If memory serves, and I'm going to prove my age here right now a little bit, they did something similar when it came to, they referred to them as like the young guns, and that was Eric Johnson, TJ Oshie, David Perron that year. Like when these guys that we're talking about prospects, that's what these guys were. They were the next wave of Blues that were coming in, very, very high pedigree, and for solid reason. But I think they rushed them too early. Now, you could be able to obviously say, well, they didn't rush this guy, like offensively. Okay, sure, point production, maybe not. But when you also look at sometimes David Perron's production off and on the ice, TJ Oshie's, they were still kids. And so the Blues are not going to make this mistake here again a second time. And so they're not going to rush guys like Snuggerud, Dvorsky, pressure them to be able to make the NHL roster. And when it comes to Dvorsky here, could he have hung? Absolutely. He could have been playing third line and have been no problem. And I don't think that anybody would have faulted him one bit. I think this would have been an easy solution, third line, and just let him just play. But the benefit now is that the Blues have a very good developmental system, especially in Springfield. I was going to say down in Springfield. It's more north in Springfield. And right now, Dvorsky, he's tied for the AHL lead in goals for a rookie, and he's 6th among points as a rookie. So he's got 6 goals, 8 points in 11 games. I think this is the right path for him. So did he look out of place? Yes and no at times, but I think all in all, I think he was a very solid fit for a bottom 6 forward. But that's not where you need Dvorsky playing. You need him playing power play in top 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also on that question, I don't mean to entirely repeat myself here, but I mean this is what people want to know with the big boys, I guess, as we're calling them. He's absolutely tearing it up in Springfield this year on a pretty rough, I think, Springfield roster too. Really like shining above the others. Do you think that there is? I guess, how do you see his projection fitting onto the Blues of the future? At his age, at 19, I think it would be pretty shocking to see him get an extended run at the NHL. I think that's safe to say. Unless you disagree, feel free to say so. But where do you see him eventually projecting into this team as like? We obviously can't say that he's just going to be the best center prospect the Blues have had since blank, but is he more of a reliable 2C or really like above average 3C? And then also, do you think maybe even next season is too early to see Dvorsky, or is that mostly going to depend on how this season goes for him?
Yeah. So I think personally, unless it's just for a very quick cup of coffee, I mean, I think this guy is going to be staying with the AHL all season long. I had a question asked for me last night when everything happened with Holloway. Is this time to bring up Dvorsky? And I said, absolutely not. Do not bring up Dvorsky. I would personally call up, you've got Callan. You've got other guys who are on the AHL roster with NHL experience, or they're a little bit more ready. I'm like, I would not rush this kid here right now. Could he make the roster next year? Yeah, possibly. I mean, it just kind of depends on like what his development here looks like. I think long term, I think this guy turns into a very, very good 2C. If you think about what it was like whenever you had O'Reilly and Thomas up and going, we were starting to get the tail end of O'Reilly's peak towards like that latter phase later, like for his career. We're going to be very fortunate to be able to get a good, solid 1-2 punch of Robert Thomas and Dalibor Dvorsky, both pretty well in their primes. Robert Thomas he'll still be. I'm still trying to think about his age at this point. No, I mean, you're going to have both guys who are pretty well in their peaks, like running at the exact same time. So if and when Robert Thomas goes down here with an injury right now, I don't know if you would count him as a very reliable 1C at the peak of his career. Maybe, hopefully, but I think that he's a very, very sound, solid 2C here with his career. So put him even point projections. I can't stand these. You put him at like 65 points, 65 points very conservatively, just depending on deployment, depending on, those are a lot going to that 65 here, very conservatively. And then you get closer to like that 70 here, if he gets more ice time and deployment.
That's exciting.
Yeah. We're Dvorsky fans, Dvorsky fanboys, I would say. So we're really excited to see him up here. You mentioned Holloway. I just wanted to note. I meant to talk about this at the top of the episode. We haven't had a note news episode since the Holloway injury, so I just wanted to say that, like, thank goodness he's okay, and we are very relieved that Dylan Holloway, the person, is okay, and that, I mean, could have been a lot worse. Things like that have been a lot worse in the past.
He was skating today. Like, that's toughness you can't coach.
He's a game time decision, and I can't believe that at all.
Yeah.
Seriously. Incredibly fortunate. Yeah. So that's thank goodness, like I said. Well, let's sort of shift here. We've talked about a couple offensive prospects. Let's talk about one of the more prominent defensive prospects in Adam Jiricek, obviously being the top prize from the Blues 2024 draft. He's a right shot defenseman. He's got some offensive capabilities, hopefully. And he is playing in the OHL this year for the Brantford Bulldogs. Some news-ish out right now that maybe he got injured in a game this week. Not many details out right now, so we can't really speak a whole lot to that. Hopefully he doesn't have to miss significant time. But that would be tough news if it's true, and if he does have to miss some time because he just returned from that lengthy knee injury. really, we haven't seen a whole lot from Adam Jiricek in a while because he was out with an injury, and we haven't seen a whole lot from him this year quite yet. In only a few games, he has yet to get on the score sheet. So I think, I mean, right now we've only got the one question that we've sort of asked you with the other two guys. What are you hoping to see from Jiricek this season in the OHL? We broke it down on our previous episode. Alec and I sort of gave our takes. I just want him to like fill a role, whatever it is, just sort of establish himself as a guy who's, fills this role, X or Y or Z. But Mike, what do you want to see from him this season?
So after missing nearly a year, because now he's coming back here in November. It was January when the World Juniors happened, and he had that massive knee injury, and so he's been out here ever since. He missed training camp, developmental camp. I mean, he missed all of it. Did not see any time here on ice. Granted, he was with the Blues, did a lot of off ice development here with them, but he didn't see any sort of ice time. And so now he's back here with the Brantford Bulldogs. He, like you said, according to Colin Ward, who covers the Bulldogs, he would not return. I'm trying to find it. Would not return tonight, referring to their previous game. Sustained an injury here, I believe, in the second period. And then as of just right now, as we're recording 20 hours ago, said Adam Jiricek is going to miss some time by the sounds of it. So no idea how long that sounds. My biggest thing that I was going to say here initially was that he can stay healthy, and that he can, So here's some notes that I jotted down here beforehand. He's playing right now as a top pairing defender. Great, love the deployment. He's not scoring at a crazy offensive level that he scored here in 2022-23. We're here with Czechia at like the U20 squad, where he scored 29 points, including 12 goals in 41 games. And in fact, he has yet to produce a single point here at all. So that's fine. That's fine with me. He's taken one penalty in which it was like a covering the puck with his glove kind of thing. Like it was just a rare, random penalty.
Right.
But it's a +1 rating. They lost 4-1 here against Guelph here on Wednesday. He was not on the ice for any single goal against, which is awesome. And if my tracking's right, he has not been on the ice at all for an even strength goal against this season. Now, granted, that's only 4 games, but 4 games, not a single 5-on-5 penalty or goal against. I'll take it. Yeah. So I'm really interested to see what the news is going to be surrounding Jiricek. I'm hoping it's not going to be lengthy. Maybe a couple of games. Hopefully, we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, but I like the fact that Brantford is comfortable enough to play him as a top deploying defender right out the gate. I think they know the talent. I think they see it. So I just want to be able to see consistent deployment, consistent here with him. I'm not looking for anything fantastic. It's just going to be one of those, like, once the season ends, great, positive notes, cool, you played kind of deal. So, nothing too crazy, I think, with Jiricek here right now.
Fair enough.
So it sounds like if he stays healthy, we've got another Philip Broberg.
Hey, if that's what we get, and we get by chance another Philip Broberg.
Oh, I'm taking that every day of the week.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of mentioned it's only 4 games that he hasn't allowed an even strength goal, but I mean, we were saying that about Philip Broberg, right? Through however many games it was that he hadn't been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal, and we were pretty excited about that.
Right.
I talked in our previous episode. I kind of got myself excited thinking about a pair of Broberg and Jiricek potentially working out. That would, as I said last week, that would feed families if they could, reach those developmental heights. But jury's out on that one. But that would be so
great.
Cool.
It'd be great to be able to see. It doesn't need to happen right now. Doesn't even need to happen next season. It can happen 3-4 seasons on the line.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah. So why don't we shift now and talk about some bigger picture, more organizational things, talking about the Blues as a team, as an organization, considering also sort of their NHL roster as well. We've talked ad nauseum here on Note News about the Blues retool and all the various implications of that and how that's going. But they are at this important inflection point. It's sort of a mushy middle. They aren't bottoming out. They're not a contender, and yet they still have some promising guys like we've talked about. We're also seeing the front office try to get a little creative, maybe skip some steps of the retool by getting Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, and that double offer sheets move. That so far so good. Those two guys look great. But my question for you here, and this can sort of turn into a bigger discussion. We can sort of take it player by player. But at this point, what do you see as some of the biggest pieces that the Blues are missing when it comes to building a successful team, and maybe which prospects or younger players might be candidates to fill those holes? It could be specific positional scarcity. It could be a specific role on the team, like a distributor or a sniper. I mean, something like that. For example, Philip Broberg has so far, up until his injury, filled a huge hole that the Blues have on the blue line. But why don't we start with maybe just one position of need that you see, and maybe a name or two that could fit that?
Well, is it fair to say I think they need a little bit of everything? So
yeah, let's talk about it.
So I think let's start here with the back end. Goaltender is the position I think I'm least concerned about here at all. If and when Jordan Binnington goes down, he moves, go away, like whatever that it is, you've got Joel Hofer, who's ready to come up. He's looked very, very good here as a 1B here right now.
Build the statue.
Yeah. But then I think somebody who's kind of flying under the radar here right now in Springfield is Colton Ellis. He's taken a very, very similar route to a Jordan Binnington, where he played some significant time here in the ECHL, worked his way up to the AHL. And in my opinion, he has taken over as the number 3 goaltender here on this depth chart. So I think he's passed over Vadim Zarenko. Yeah. Zarenko played last season as the primary, goaltender here of the future, but he went 12-14-1 with a 3.49 GAA and a 904 save. Not overly promising, but okay. His stats this season don't really give me much of a promise here either, though. He's 1-3 with a 4.28 goals against and a 9.63 save percentage. Yikes. But you look just right next to him at Colton Ellis, he has a 2.88 goals against average and a 9.13 save percentage. And this is also taken into account, I was able to watch yesterday, from start to finish here for a Thunderbirds game, which is rare that I get the chance to sit down and watch the entire game. They look great. First period was incredibly, incredibly shaky, the entire team. He let up 3 goals against here in the first period, but they also suffered 16 shots against to their 6. They weren't awake. It was a morning game. It was 10 o'clock Central, so I want to say it was an 11 o'clock start here on their time. It was one of their school days here that they do in the AHL. They looked incredibly flat. But then he managed to stop the remaining 21 shots between the second and third period, made some extremely acrobatic saves here in the meantime. Here, able to just really hone in and save that game here for this team. So I think Colton Ellis, I think, is going to be the goaltender of the future if they're going to look here potentially at oh boy, it was a Jake Allen Bishop situation, where they had to pick one guy, and Bishop won playing time. And so I think you may potentially, not obviously you don't know the future, where you may see Hofer want some more playing time and Hofer may need to go away. And then you've got Ellis who rises up and takes that backup position. So I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you guys, your thoughts here on the goaltending.
Well, just to clarify, Shirenko, I think you said 9.63, but you meant 8.63, right? So yes. on the save percentage note. But, yeah. I mean, like you said, it's sort of this. Unfortunate for Shirenko, but this perfect storm for Colton Ellis, where he's surging just as Shirenko seems to be slumping a little bit, and this has kind of been somewhat of a trend for Jiricek the past 3 seasons in Springfield. His save percentage has gone down, and his his goals against average has gone up every season. So, and we sort of saw this general thing happening, but like with both of these goalies in the preseason as well, where Jiricek's starts looked a little shaky and Colton Ellis looked not too bad at all. Alec, do you want to pick out any positions, or do you have any goalie notes that you want to talk about?
Oh no, just we at Note News are big fans of the goaltending situation in St. Louis, which it feels good to be able to say that after the last decade of hockey. I mean, it was never terrible, but I mean, just moving forward from goaltending now to I think defense is a big question in Blues land. And then obviously there's a lot that needs to be filled. Do you think the one or two moves or one or two like tools that the Blues should be looking for when they're looking to acquire a player? Do you think it's going to take a big swing to really fix this? Like, I don't know, maybe a Zach Werenski or some like big name that would take a lot of capital to move? Or do you think at this point in their retool, the Blues aren't in the position to do that and are more looking for a smaller, upside based off of whatever trait? And if that's the case, then what should they be looking for in your opinion?
Yeah. So you're talking more of like a top pairing type of a defenseman. You're right. Okay. So, excuse me. So that's one of my biggest notes here right now is that they don't have that guy. Now,
exactly.
Could potentially have that guy in Jiricek, potentially, if he can stay healthy. He's a guy who should be able to play in long, big minutes, but we still don't know what the future here kind of looks like for him. We could have it in Theo Lindell, who has been proven to play a lot of big minutes, especially at the international stage. For those who don't know, he came into the World Juniors here as an injury replacement and then ended up taking home, I believe it was defenseman of the tournament. So all of a sudden, he goes from, hey, dude, we just need you to just fill in here for us here as like a seventh man, to one of the best players of the tournament at the international stage. So that's a very, very big compliment, and something here I don't think Blues fans should undervalue as we get a guy here like him that's coming in. One of the things I think that they overstepped here on, the Blues in general, I think went too heavy with the undersized, mobile, puck-moving defensemen. I think you went too many of those with Scott Perunovich, Jordan Falk, or Justin Falk. You've got Torrey Krug. That's three guys right there who are all under 6 feet. So you didn't have any size. But now you're starting to see guys who were just drafted this past year here alone. You've got Colin Ralph, 6'5", 227. Lucas Fisher, 6'3", 185. William McKissick, 6'3", 201. I mean, like, these are all big, big dudes that they drafted. So, and these guys are 18, which is even scarier to think that these guys can get bigger. So, size, I think, is like one of the biggest things that they were lacking here in, and right now they're really filling that in. They need to kind of go back to that old school where guys are afraid a little bit more to kind of go in front of the net because they're afraid to just like fall on their face because they got checked here, or something else. So that's, I think, one of the biggest things that they were lacking for a long time. So it just depends to see where these guys here look at. I like Lucas Fisher. I think he's going to be a good, solid two-way defenseman. If all projects well, he's going to be a very good second pair defenseman. But we could say that about a lot of guys. Good second pair. Okay, but who's going to take that step for the first pair? But when it all comes at the end of the day, you got too many guys right now. They're all not going to fit into this puzzle. So eventually they may have to package a few different guys where it may be, an Andre Kosh, who they just drafted, Kodoroki, who is a seventh round draft pick, and he's tearing up the juniors in Russia here right now, well over a point per game pace. You may package a couple different guys here like this and a Zarenko and say, hey, I need that guy because right now we're in it. The Blues just aren't in it here right now, and they're not going to be next year and probably not the year here after that. But in a few years, that's where the conversation's really going to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I'm a little bit encouraged by the fact that Doug Armstrong and the Blues have sort of recognized that lack of size, like you've said, and have at least started to try and fix that. I did want to add, like, on the Theo Lindell note, because I really like him. Just because, I mean, when I think of him, I just think like solid, steady, like safe guy. It's sort of the way that I think about him, and that can't hurt to have on on the defense at all.
No, somebody on Twitter, we were trying to figure out, like NHL comparables. I can't stand them because the guy, like, you're always going to say, well, this guy was projected to be like this, but he didn't live up to his hype. I'm like, no, but each guy is it's their own player. They're their own person. So you can't just say this. But with somebody, and I'm not going to shout him out, compared Lindstein to a very, very good comp, and that was Jonas Broberg. Or give me a second. I'm going to look it up. It's not. Man, this is going to bug me. Jonas Brodin. That's who it was. Brodin, not Broberg. We've got Broberg on the mind here now in St. Louis. So Jonas Brodin, big. He's good point producer, not a very loud type of a guy, just goes in, does his job, and leaves. And I think that's what you're going to get. He's good minute muncher, who plays well over, I think on average is like 22, 23 minutes here per game. PK, he can play on the power play. He can like just fill him in where he needs to, and the guy's just going to get the job done. So I think that's who you're going to get here with a Theo Lindell.
That'd be really cool. One last question for you before we wrap it up. We've talked goaltending. We've talked defense here now. One sort of position of scarcity that I see on the Blues is center depth, right? And this has really been exposed by the Robert Thomas injury. Do you have any ideas there? We sort of talked Dvorsky a little bit. Any other names people should keep an eye on? Or do you have like another idea of what's lacking on the forward lines?
It's definitely going to be the center depth here most often. Dvorsky is going to end up taking that 2C role here more than anything. But, again, like you've got guys who, you're definitely missing those scores. Again, like a Bolduc, he may end up topping out again, like as a very good second line winger who contributes 20, 25 goals here per game. Bear with me. I'm looking up. I'm getting my guys here right now. I'm going to look here at my center depth. Mercic is definitely a guy who could end up playing center. I think he's going to be a better winger than he's going to be a center here in the NHL. I could not forget here about him. Adam Yeko. Here's a guy, keep your eyes on Adam Yeko. It's going to be hard to miss him because the guy stands right now at 18 years old at 6'5", 201. It's going to be hard to miss this dude. But he is a heavy hitter, powerful skater. Like this dude can fly. But he can also shoot, skate. He's a solid all-around package of a player. So he's another guy, again, who can play center. Again, likely will end up going here to the wing. And then I think it's going to be those guys. And of course, Dylan Peterson. Peterson's here's another guy who came here out of Boston University with the Terriers. He played very consistently with Macklin Celebrini. That's the guy. I wanted to say Mitch Kov. It was not Mitch Kov here, obviously. Macklin Celebrini, who he actually played on the line here with them quite often. The NCAA, it's not overly productive with 60 points in 119 games, but he's a guy who gets his work boots on and just goes to work here every single day. Peterson was a guy who uses his 6'4", 192-pound frame just solidly. He went quiet here recently, 2 assists in the last 7 games, but right now he's right behind Dvorsky here in rookie performance. here in AHL production here right now here with the Thunderbirds. So he's another guy, very valuable third line forward here, very comfortably. Second line here, I think could be very sneaky if his development goes the right way.
Awesome.
Yeah,
a lot of names to think about. Hopefully the future is bright here in St. Louis. And in the near-term future, the Blues have an important stretch coming up. They're about to play the Utah Hockey Club in about 3 minutes as we record this, and then they've got a stretch against some Eastern Conference teams, the Capitals, the Bruins, the Sabres. So make sure to check back in with Note News. We're going to break all that down. Mike, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on. I think we'd love to have you back sometime, maybe check in on some prospects down the line. Why don't you tell our viewers and listeners one more time where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, the new Substack, Blue Notes Rising, you can find me here on Substack. I've got it's all free here right now, but eventually I'm hoping, and I don't want to overpromise, but some good draft coverage, interviews. Here's we really build up this community here of folks who are really interested in the Blues prospects here on Substack. But again, most of my content here is going to end up still being here on Twitter at @M_Meyer3.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I said at the top, we'll be sure to include links to all that in the show notes, so be sure to check that out and follow along with all that great content. In terms of finding us, we'd really appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, as I said, follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. It goes a long way. And then we're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @NoteNewsPod, where we post a lot of great content as well. Mike, thanks again. This was a lot of fun. We'll see y'all next time on Note News, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.